This all kind of started when I was about 10 years old, and I got in my first geometry class. It was an exciting time because the teacher went to the blackboard and made a little dot and said, today we're going to learn about dimensions. When he said dimensions, I got all excited because I thought, oh, he's going to talk about all these worlds I live in my mind and all these other things I'm experiencing. I thought, wow, that's the first adult that's going to talk about that. And so I got really excited, and then I got really, really, really disappointed because after he put the little dot on the blackboard, he said, the dot is dimension 0 and it doesn't exist. And I thought, oh, I think I'm going to fail this class. I thought, if the dot doesn't exist, the line doesn't exist, the plane doesn't exist, you don't have existence. I closed my eyes in the bus, and in my mind's eye, I visualized myself seeing the bus from above. And I rose further and further, and as I did, the bus started to look like a dot. And then eventually, I rose further, and the country I was in started to look like a dot. And I rose further, and I saw the Earth starting to look like a dot. And I rose further, and I saw the solar systems looking like a dot. And I rose further, and I saw the galaxy looking like a dot. And I thought, oh my God, it's dots all the way up. And then I flew back into the galaxy, flew back into the Earth, and found the bus I was in, and opened my eyes and looked at my hand, and I thought, wow, I wonder what's in my hand. And I closed my eyes again, and I flew into my hand, and I thought, wow, it's made out of millions of dots, cells. And then I flew onto the surface of one of those cells, and I looked around, and it was made out of millions of smaller dots that looked like stars in the sky. And I thought, whoa. And I flew into one of those dots and looked in the middle. Sure enough, there was another teeny-weeny dot in the middle of those atoms. And I thought, wow, it's dots all the way down. And a light went on, and I thought, oh, the way to solve the dimensional problem is to reverse the axiom completely and say the only thing that exists is the dot. Within the dot is infinite amount of division, infinite amount of information. And I thought, wow, everything is made out of dots, and the dots are arranged differently, and that makes up our whole world. I opened my eyes, and I looked at all the people in the bus, and I thought, wow, they're all made out of dots, and I could kind of see the infinite dots of their existence. I got really excited. In general, we could define our society in two ways. We've got people that have a tendency to be very spiritual, and these people tend to think in terms of infinities, that infinite potential and all this stuff. And on the other hand, we have scientific people that tend to think in finite systems, closed systems that have very defined boundaries. And the two don't necessarily agree. And it's called gravitation because it's pretty thick. So when you pick it up, you know everything you need to know about gravity. At one point, I stopped the conference, and I said, wait a minute, I got to understand something. I opened gravitation to page 719, and I said, if I understand well, this is our current model of the universe. It looks like a balloon that's being inflated that has pennies glued to it. And the pennies are representative of galaxies. And as the balloon inflates, the pennies move away from each other, representing the expansion of our universe. And they're all looking at me, you know, going, yes, this is the current model. These are fundamental principles. What I want to know, and I've looked in many, many different physics books. I read all these equations, worked out all this stuff. What I'm not understanding, and you gentlemen might be able to point this equation to me, I haven't found anywhere where it explains who's this guy. And the whole room became really quiet. I will always remember one of the students was drinking coffee, and he kind of coughed a little bit when I said that. He thought maybe I'd say the word God in the physics department. If I was to point at something that connected all things, what would that be? If I could choose just one thing that connects everything, what would that be? Eventually, I came to conclude the only thing that's everywhere, that connects all things, is space. Space is everywhere. Between galaxies, between stars, between planets, between cells, between atoms, and even the atomic structure is made out of 99.99999% space. 10 to the 93 grams per centimeter cube. That is an enormous number. You might have noticed in your bank account, every time you add a zero, it makes a big change. Imagine that you have 50-some zeros and you keep adding. At 93 zeros, right, you've got the density of the vacuum. Well, to give you an idea of how dense is that, imagine that you took all of the stars we see in the universe. There's billions of galaxies, they have billions of stars in them. Some of the stars are even much larger than our sun. And we took them all and we squished them all into a centimeter cube of space with like this huge trash compactor or something. So in fact, our universe can be considered as a black hole. Technically, it obeys that condition. Did you know you live in a black hole universe?
The universe, with its black hole condition, was the first data point Harriman charted. He next added galactic centers and stars. They lined up in a linear progression with the universe, an amazing result.
And found that there is still 10 to the 55th grams in a proton volume. 10 to the 55th grams of vacuum energy is still present in a proton volume. Where did we see that number? 10 to the 55th gram is the mass of the universe. There is the mass of the universe present in vacuum fluctuation, in vacuum density, in the volume of a proton, which is a very, very small entity. This confirms something fundamental to me. It confirmed that the vacuum is truly the thing that connects all things. It showed that everything is entangled and everything is one. And it showed it mathematically. It's one thing to say everything's one, which is some things you find people saying in spiritual worlds. However, this actually proves it. We know that the electron and the positron exchange and disappear and reappear and disappear and reappear. It seems to exchange across the vacuum. That is, the vacuum fluctuates, produces an electron and fluctuates, and then the electron disappears. The electron carries the information from the material world to the vacuum, informs the vacuum, and then the vacuum informs back the material world when the electron comes back out. And so we actually are constantly appearing and disappearing at a very rapid rate, at the speed of light. Did you know that half the time you're the vacuum? Who are you when you're the vacuum? And what are you saying to the rest of the universe when you're informing the vacuum?